r/NoSleep. Posted by u/withbite. I was the last living person in a town of the dead. Screams filled the night. The sounds of doors being slammed, glass bottles being smashed, rise through the building. Someone is weeping. Someone starts to sing. I crouch in the darkness, the last living person in this town. The song is about the sea, about a lost love and will they ever come back to me. I listen and wait for the low tide and remember. We wanted to have children and raise them far from the city in a place where they would be surrounded by nature. As we drove, I kept glancing at my wife. She would smile and say, "Eyes on the road." I can't put into words how much I loved her. When we curled up in bed at night, dawn was never far enough away. I glanced at her. Eyes on the road. After a journey of almost a week, the final leg of which was on alarmingly narrow and winding roads, we arrived on a brisk, clear early autumn day. The town revealed itself as we turned a corner. It was beautiful. Its buildings huddled together on the edge of the sea. The water that day was still and seemed to reach out forever, and I knew we had found our home. We soon reached the small hotel on the southern edge of the town. It was 3 stories, which made it the closest thing to a skyscraper around here. We parked up, climbed out, stretched aching limbs. I looked up at the peeling paint on the window frames, at a bird's tail, which was all I could see of what appeared to be unpaying guests in the guttering, and said to the hotel, "Nice to meet you." My wife rested her head on my shoulder and asked, "Are you nervous?" I put my arm around her, replied, "Not in the least." Which was not true, but she knew that anyway. We had discussed the challenge we were taking on in detail. We had both spent our entire careers working in hospitality. Managing a hotel, though, even one as small as this, was new. We had scrutinized the details online, gone over the figures again and again, and finally had decided to go for it. I had no regrets as I retrieved the keys from the mailbox where the realtor told us they would be. I was trying to work out which one was for the front door when my wife said, "Hey!" I looked up. She was standing in the vestibule. The door had been unlocked all along. "Welcome to the back of Beyond," she said with a cheeky grin and disappeared inside. We planned on spending a good deal of time on first cleaning the hotel from top to bottom. We had taken a calculated gamble by moving in during the closed season. From the start of next summer, there would be visitors, drawn by the area's outstanding natural beauty, and as the only hotel for miles around, we were confident we could attract enough guests to make this a going concern. First though, this building needed some TLC, and this was a perfect time for getting the place exactly how we wanted it. My wife had also created a new website. It was still at a basic stage, but, again, given time, it would become an invaluable way to market ourselves. Even though a major hitch had presented itself. One we really should have thought of. Because of the remote location, the internet connection and mobile signal were patchy at best. Non-existent the rest of the time. It was a challenge. No doubt one of many we would face, we figured. As time drifted in the slow rhythm of out-of-the-way places, we concentrated on making the hotel as cozy as possible. We soon met all of our neighbors, which in a place this small, meant everyone in the entire town. They were friendly but reserved. Most older than ourselves. One couple nearer our age had a young family, and I noticed the catch in my wife's voice when she spoke to their parents as the children looked on. We had agreed to wait for at least 12 months, until the business was on its feet, before we would try to have our first child. I could tell she did not want to leave it that long, and neither did I, to be honest. I did have concerns about bringing children into this troubled world. There were so many challenges and threats, some painfully clear, some more nebulous. Back when I was researching the area, I ended up going off at a tangent and finding myself on a website that showed how rising sea levels could affect the coastlines. I zoomed in on the town and found that it was predicted to be underwater in 70 years. That bothered the hell out of me, but I still believed that people would open their eyes and we could avert this. For now, I comforted myself with the thought that, out here, we were in a peaceful, sheltered place. We had gotten into the habit of walking along the pebble beach next to the town early in the morning. This, we had discovered, was low tide and when the beach was at its widest. Later in the day it would disappear altogether as high tide brought with it waves which, at times, crashed onto the edge of the town's main street. The weather had been remarkably mild up till recently, but now it had turned. The first, earlier than usual snowfall had closed the only road into town, and as we walked hand in hand across the beach, a wind edged with a bitter coldness swirled around us. We had set off later than usual, as we had tried again and again to get online without success, and the water was uncomfortably close to our feet. I was about to suggest calling it a day and retreating to the warmth of the hotel when a wave rose out of nowhere and crashed over our heads. It was so sudden neither of us had seen it coming and we stood there gasping, looking at each other in disbelief. Gasping and dripping. My wife burst out laughing. "What the hell?" she said. I spat out traces of the seawater that I had accidentally swallowed. "Insane," I replied and shook my head. Then I spotted something in her hair. I reached over and gently removed it. "What is it?" she asked. "A little stone," I said. "It must have been thrown up by the water." I turned the thing I had retrieved around in my fingers. It was small and dirty white. Felt, I realized, different to a stone. But what was it? My wife exhaled, suddenly lifted her foot. She was staring at the beach. Lying among the pebbles right next to where she stood was a jawbone. It looked human. And now I could see them everywhere among the pebbles. Where the wave had fallen lay dozens of bones. I still held the thing I had taken from my wife's hair. The bone. "Damn," I said. My wife looked as though she was going to be sick. "Come on," I said, "let's go home." As soon as we were back, while my wife went to have a shower, I turned the heating up and headed for the bar. In our plans, this was going to be a good income stream for us. A place not only for hotel residents and other visitors to enjoy a drink but also somewhere for locals to gather. We were not sure how keen the other townsfolk would be. We got the feeling many were abstainers. Still, we could offer coffee and lemonade and a warm welcome. I put a pot of coffee on and poured myself a stiff drink. About 30 minutes later my wife reappeared. She was wearing her favorite sweatshirt and joggers and padded barefoot across the wooden floor to accept the glass of bourbon I held out. "You smell like an old fishing boat," she told me and knocked the drink back in one. "I feel like a sailor's moldy underwear," replied. She wrinkled her nose, said, "Yuck," then held out her glass for a refill. The next day she was very subdued. We were tiling an ensuite bathroom in one of the larger rooms and she did not say a word. I decided not to press her. I left it until we were tidying up at the end of the day to say, "I'm here for you, always. You know that." She did not reply, so I went to tidy myself up with a hot shower. Afterwards, I headed down to the bar. I had never been a heavy or even a regular drinker, but I needed a drink to take the edge off. I could not get the sight of the bones out of my mind. I could only assume they had been of a drowned sailor and had lain in the ocean for many years until a freak tide had carried them ashore. Mighty bad luck on our part to be standing where X marks the spot when they were thrown back onto land. The lights were turned off in the bar. Light cast from a street lamp crept across the room. My wife was sitting on the floor, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was crying. I knelt next to her. "Honey, what's wrong?" I asked. She looked up at me. "Everything. Any chance we could narrow it down?" I smiled when I said this, trying to ease her back from the dark place she seemed to be in. She shook her head, wiped her hand across her face. "Everything," she repeated. "I miss my parents. I miss my friends. I miss being able to go out and get a coffee and going to the gym. I miss catching a movie at the cinema or getting a takeaway in." I did not know what to say. I had not seen this coming. I had thought she was as happy as I out here. "I love you," I said, not knowing what else to say. "And I'm sorry. What can we do to change the way you feel?" She did not hesitate. "Leave here." She looked me in the eye, and I looked away. I did not mean to. It was just for a moment and then I met her gaze. But it was too late. In that briefest of moments the distance between us had been revealed. "I can't believe you want to give up on our dream," I told her. There was anger in my voice. I could not help it. After our conversation she went to sleep in one of the guest bedrooms that was nearer to completion. I stayed in the bar and drank and I was pretty far gone when I heard a door slam. Aside from the wind and the rain the nights are temples of silence. Something was wrong. Nothing in the hotel I could see, so I went outside, saw a figure walking away. It was my wife. I followed. She reached the beach. The tide was coming in fast at that time of night and the waves were only feet away from her as they crashed onto the pebbles. "What are you doing?" I called out. "Come home please." She did not turn around when she replied, "I need some space. Leave me alone." These were the last words she ever said to me. A wave broke almost at her feet, then another. She tried to back away but slipped and fell. The water was on her before I could even move. I ran towards her but when I reached where she had been there was no sign of her. She had been taken by the waves. I stood there shouting her name, waking townsfolk, who emerged from their houses and came down to find me standing in the water. I remember being pulled away and trying to resist. I remember someone putting a blanket around my shoulders. I remember weeping. I was told no one could get through to the Coast Guard. In the morning I tried to phone her parents, but there was still no signal. I waved away all offers of company and help and locked myself in the hotel. I retreated to the bar. I had enough bourbon for now, and after that, I did not know, could not think. Days, nights, passed. They were all the same to me. I was sleeping off another hangover when I was woken by the sound of someone shouting right outside the window. "Hurry! She's over there!" A second voiced this. A third, "Someone get him!" A banging noise on the front door finally roused me off the seat in which I was sprawled. The man who had knocked was wide-eyed with awe when I opened the door. "It's your wife," he said. "She is on the beach." I pushed past him, sprinted down the street towards the sea. A man and a woman were leaning over what looked like a pile of clothes that had been washed up onto the beach. As I came closer, I saw a tangle of dark hair, a face, movement. It was my wife. She was alive. Somehow. I called out, started to sob. The man and woman began to move away. Why? I thought. They need to stay with her. She needs help. Then they glanced around, at me, and I saw the confusion in their eyes. The fear. My wife looked up. Her flesh was gray and bloated. Her skin had broken open in places. Wisps of water hung from her chin. She pushed herself to her feet, stood there swaying in the dawn light. Her jaw was dislocated and hung grotesquely down to one side. She saw me, and smiled, a crooked line of teeth and gum. The stump of a tongue flickered inside her mouth as if she was trying to speak. It broke my heart and repelled me. This was not my wife. It was an aberration. A nightmare, returned from the murdering sea. I collapsed to my knees, and she began to walk towards me, swaying as each uncertain footstep met pebble and then the tarmac of the street. As the thing that had been my wife walked along the street, more people came out of their houses to find out what the commotion was. Seeing her, they cried out, and yet more of the townsfolk emerged. Soon every man, woman and child was gathered round. My wife, what she had become, swayed and looked at them, with her dislocated grin, the ragged remains of her tongue trying to communicate. It was then that the wave came. It was like none that had come before. It was a tumultuous, monstrous force of water dozens of feet high that was now rushing towards us. I watched it transfixed for a moment, then somehow broke free of the paralyzing horror which had gripped every one of us. I ran into the hotel. I scrambled up the stairs and from a window watched as the wave carried them out to sea. The people of this town. My neighbors. It carried them out, and before long I had lost sight of them. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I have remained holed up in one of the rooms on the 3rd floor of the hotel. I am recording this, as much to occupy my mind and try and keep focused as anything. I check my watch. Low tide is close. It is almost time to make my move. Hours after they were taken, I watched in horror from the window as the first of the townsfolk returned from the sea. They emerged from the water and began to walk with an uncertain gait towards town. More came back on the next high tide. Most congregated in the bar in the hotel. I do not know why. They were never that sociable when they were alive. It's clear though, that there is an awareness, a crude intelligence in them. Perhaps this is stronger when they are together? Whatever the reasons, the noise they make below me, the hideous cacophony, is not constant. There are lulls. I have worked out that these coincide with low tide. I listen. It is silent. I open the door and head down the stairs quiet as I can. I have no choice but to pass the door to the bar. It is open. The once townsfolk sit slumped over tables and each other. Broken glass litters the floor. My wife is with them. The thing that was. She has seen me. She looks at me, raises a hand, holds it out to me. A shiver passes through my body. I run, until I am out on the street. What now? I must escape. I must get away from this place. I look around, trying to decide which way to go, and my eyes are drawn to the ocean. It is silent and still. I am crying. I can't stop. If I don't make it and this recording is found, I ask that it be shared. The dead may have slipped away so that they will not be discovered, when finally outsiders can reach the town again in the months ahead. Then, those that come will find it deserted, wrecked, and a mystery. The truth needs to be known about what happened here. People need to be warned. The changes to the oceans bring with them a danger no one has foreseen. As the seas rise, more and more will be taken. And I know, because I have seen it with my own eyes, that there is no mercy for those who are caught in the tides. In the embrace of the sea there is only terror.